conscious to unconscious, the better we'll be able to utilize the potential of our minds to better seize control of the jurisdiction once it comes back to us as we fight forward. So it's a work within that has to be done to best train our minds to focus, to understand alertness and a simplicity of life that can get us away from the subtle attacks on us to counterbalance what we're doing. Because we're under a lot of frequency frenzy. When you talk about megahertz and all of these different radio waves, they're kept at a certain frequency so that we cannot expand into certain potential aspects of our consciousness. I was just informed by a biochemist that plastic bottles themselves actually not only leak plastic into the liquid, but there's a certain aspect to that chemical compound that releases estrogen into the water, right? So when you talk about soybeans and the overabundance of estrogen and all of these things, you're talking about a situation where we are unconsciously and through a corporate understanding of things or a manipulated understanding of things, imbalancing ourselves in ways that we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
So what happens is the Moabitic experience, the experience of the Moor prior to his split up into this understanding of Venus and Mars, or man and woman, used to be autotrophic, just like plants were. We used to be one being. And the return is to that consciousness. So now, as we proceed forward, the feminine attributes of the masculine person is beginning to be manipulated so that what of Marsian energy is necessary to establish in government and rule is now retarded. And the same thing is happening with the feminine aspect. The Venusian aspect of her experience is now beginning to become belittled. And the Marsian aspect of her experience is becoming forefront. And the imbalance is not necessarily it's not necessarily an imbalance in the sense that those aspects of selves don't exist. Within every man is a woman, within every woman is a man. But there's a balance to it that has to be understood from a divine essence and a divine way so that they can both be polarized and used in the proper light to return the consciousness of the Moors to the Moabitic way. You know what I'm saying? We was asexual. We didn't really need anything because we had all of those organs in one being at a time. And now there's a different pull on us through the foods and the chemicals and the frequency range, and there's a lot of psychological little implants that are seated in your unconscious that are waking dormant when you're in sleeping states and rapid eye movement states that you unconsciously wake up to, and that program glitches itself into sync. You know? And so the more you become, what I've been taught is the more quiet you become, the more you become aware of what's natural to you and what isn't.
Meditation is that.
Yeah.
That would be called meditation,
Yeah.
actually. Not necessarily a ritual, but just being able to think, right? And hear yourself think.
Right.
And hear the response come back, right? And so a lot of other groups put that into some religious ritual thing that you have to do.
Right.
And then people don't take it seriously, so they'll say, I'll go to whatever religion they do on Sunday, and then they back to doing whatever they do on Monday, and it's not like that. You know, you have to take that time. You also mentioned about, and I only say this because some are orientation, you know, just coming into oriented to their history, so it's
Okay.
perfect, and others, you know, are Moors and have been for a while, and of course, you had mentioned some of the people, like you mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King, and I know some people get upset because they think that he was one thing, but it really was something else that was going on.
Right.
And you also had mentioned Noble Drew Ali, because a lot of the information that you're talking about is before his time,
Oh, yeah.
even. It
Yeah.
definitely is before his time.
Yeah.
And he came in as a person that was trying to bring us, keep us
Right.
into the Constitution.
Drew Ali, from what I was taught, was a prophet here to return the law to the people. Not necessarily the message of creation, but the message of the law. He was a different type of prophet, and what he established with the Moorish Science Temple was a means for the people to fathom their potential power through the laws in the ways closest to what they could comprehend at the time. From all of these brothers from Father Allah, Clarence 13X, to Elijah Poole, all of these different brothers who established understandings of Moorish science, the same way Marcus Garvey did, and all these brothers, as they came up through the years, were doing was preparing the people to be able to leave religion.
Yes.
to be able to come into the understanding of freedom and the understanding of I am from the creed perspective as opposed to the faith perspective. And unfortunately, at the time, the people weren't ready for the consciousness that the prophet brought to them to return them to their proper place. So he set up the temple so that they could understand it as close to the sovereign way as possible. But he set that up and incorporated it as a 501c3 under federal jurisdiction so that the people would have time to adjust from the religion into the creed, if you will.
We're speaking. Question.
Oh, wait a minute, hold on.
I just want to mention, the prophet is incorporated as a 501c3.
It wasn't a 501c3?
Same point here.
It incorporated under Religious Corporation Act of 1872,
Okay.
which is the ancient form, which is totally different than 501c3.
Right. It's the
That's right.
prior understanding of 501c3, right?
Right, it's the original form
Okay.
of religious corporation,
Okay.
which allows you to function as a nation within this nation,
Right.
similar to the way that the Catholic Church did a year after the prophet.
Okay.
Unless it's religious corporation. You wanted to say something, right? You
Can
press
you-
you and then we'll ask, they can ask questions.
I just wanted you to re-edify on the
Can you-
creed. You were speaking about the creed,
Right.
and you know, the Muslim and the Muslim. I missed that point.
Right.
You know,
From what I was taught, the creed of Islam, the creed of the Muslim, the creed meaning the descent of the people who understood the principles of the balance that come through love, peace,
Truth.
justice, truth,
Love,
and
truth,
freedom.
peace,
Okay,
justice.
the creeds, those ways were translated for many different peoples, many different Moors, from the Brahmins to Muslims to all different types of ways, even amongst the Dogon and different people who didn't necessarily subscribe to the major religions we know now. And over time, those understandings of Islam and peace and balance was even understood over here amongst the Native Americans through different ways and different religions. All of the different Moors had an understanding of this creed, of this way of life, and it translated into different religious expressions and mythos and all of these things. And eventually, with the emergence of the major religions, talking about Christianity, talking about Islam, talking about Buddhism, okay, you had a situation where the understanding of the creed was put into a religious context to be practiced, if you will, but through an understanding that was not directly dealing with the Muslim itself. It was more dealing with the understanding of Allah, more dealing with the understanding of Jehovah, Yahadawaha, however you want to pronounce it. They were dealing with the understanding of the creed and the balance for the Moor through a understanding of creation from an external perspective. Removing the Moor from his specific experience in the understandings of the creed and the balance for creation.
So that's how with the Christian, because you were saying that with the Moors, because you made a point where some Moors are Christians and.
Right. Well, in the laws of Virginia in the 1600s, you will, I believe it was 1617. There was a specific addressing of Moors, Jews, Mohammedans, Christians, as well as Moors, Muslims, Jews, Mohammedans, and infidels not being allowed to purchase any white Christian slaves. And what it was referenced to, from what I understood, was basically a stopping of the Moors of the time to be allowed to purchase any Christian slaves, because those slaves were going to become property of the Pope through the understandings of Christianity as it emerged, as Christianity got bigger.
What year was this? Sorry.
1617, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. If there's more that can help me here, then help me. But you know what I'm saying?
There's one on the corner there.
Right here.
It's, with the Black Coast of Virginia,
Oh, okay.
1705,
1705.
that stated that all these are considered slaves except for Moors and Turks in amity, meaning with an outstanding treaty of peace and friendship. And with regards to the Moors holding Europeans as slaves, obviously there must have been Moors holding Europeans as slaves, otherwise they wouldn't have passed a law forbidding Moors to have Europeans as slaves.
Indeed.
But the interesting point about that, it was the Black Coast of Virginia 1705, which was prior to the Moroccan Treaty of 1787, which made me research and find out, because I realized that the Americans declared independence in 1776.
Right.
So when I looked in the records, I found that there was over a dozen treaties between Britain and the Moors between 1662 and 1776. And so that's what they meant when they said with Moors and Turks and amity, they mean with an outstanding treaty of peace and friendship. And so that's why they had to get us out of our original nationality, raise us up telling we descendants of West Africans born in slave ships because they could not enslave us. It would have been a violation of international law.
That's my,
Nico.
Oh, yeah.
Earlier you mentioned the thing about the water bottle and about you talked to the, was it biochemist?
Right.
About you talked about the estrogen,
Harvey.
about the plastic.
Right.
It was like something with the frequency or something?
No, not specifically talking about frequency, but she was talking about a resin that comes off of that plastic that encourages the estrogen levels in your body to increase.
Too much.
I don't know about too much, but it's
Yeah, too much.
increasing.
It elevates.
You know
It
what I'm
elevates.
saying?
I think you can look on the.
Have you heard anything about, like on all the products that are in the stores, you know how they have barcodes on them?
Oh.
Yeah, have you ever heard anything about the frequencies coming off that? And some people mark all the barcodes to keep the frequencies from coming off the
No,
stuff.
I haven't heard anything about that.
All right, we're gonna answer
Another
questions
question.
now, yes. Okay, yeah.
You mentioned,
Lakeem, could you stand up a little bit?
Stand up, we need to. He was comfortable.
I can't
you
see him.
mentioned, and correct me if I'm in error, like the prophet had religion, and that those that succeeded him, like Elijah and others like Clarence and so forth, it was to take them from religion. Would you say that at some point they will kind of like to evolve from religion and come to the oneness of self?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that. The prophet set up, from what I was taught, the prophet set up the temples in an effort to prepare the people through the consciousness that they were allowed, or better yet, prepared to receive at the time, because the slave experience that was being, what the people were coming out of was so interconnected with the understanding of Christianity and the experience of the Christian experience that there was no way that people could completely let go of the understanding of God, if you will, from the external, experience that it was given through Christianity and even through some aspects of Islam. And all that to say, what the prophet was doing in reference to the law he was bringing to the people, from what I was taught, was setting up a temple for the people to exercise that law and to recover that law and that consciousness in an effort to eventually be able to optimize it and utilize it out of recognition the same way that religious orders are recognized through the corporate body politic. Because that corporate body politic, although it was set up by us as Moors, was also to some degree the same problem that was stagnating the power that we had as aboriginals and as sovereigns to conduct ourselves within self and dealing with things directly as far as being able to channel and being able to deal with the universe as one, as opposed to through an external force known as Allah or as Buddha or what have you. You know what I'm saying?
Excellent, excellent.
Can you stand up, sir?
Stand up. Put you comfortable.
No,
You don't want to stand up, he's too comfortable.
Why don't you raise the camera?
Yeah, raise the camera now, why don't you try that?
He's all right, he's all right.
Up and all that.
You up now?
I'm a senior citizen.
Sorry, sir, sorry.
Senior citizen too.
Listen, due to the fact that this Albion has murdered all these people on the planet and has the nerve to push past Congress, push past the Senate, to push past the League of Nations and go to Iraq and start a war in Iraq and murder people and men, women, and children in Iraq, what makes us think that he's going to just give up our land just like that? I don't care how tight we get
Right,
and how many of us wake up.
right.
If he's ready to murder you,
Right.
how's he going to just give up the land?
I don't think his intention is actually letting go of the land or just giving it up. But you have to remember that this corporate understanding of the United States was auspiced. It was given sanction from Moors. So in order for you to deal with civil and statute law at all, and to deal with the corporations established through the plantations or through the colonies, you have to acknowledge those who preceded that jurisdiction. And to some degree, the efforts in confusion to lay mayhem into the recovery of that jurisdiction was the codes. That was the balance between what was us before the articles that came through after the Constitution was annexed, and the statute law that came up after it. And all that to say, the plight isn't, I'm not saying that these people are going to just let that happen, but at the same time, in the correct numbers and in the correct body politic and establishment or union amongst the Moorish movements and study, there will be a stronger force that they will have to recognize in entirety, as opposed to Moorish groups that are working in factions. There are so many groups in DC, there are groups in North Carolina, there are groups all over that have already written letters to George Bush, written letters to this dude Bill Clinton, and told him your job is no longer needed. You know what I'm saying? You were to act as president as long as we were not in, you know, proper fashion to function ourselves. And George Bush still sat right there, just like this dude Bill Clinton did. But the point is, they weren't organized in enough of a number to actually create a counterbalance to the experience that they lead in now, that eventually we will hopefully be in.
Now, I need to interject, excuse me, I need to interject with that, just for instruction. That is very interesting because, like you said, there's various groups, and even, you know, whatever they, you know, like you said, Great Seal, Moorish Sites, Temples of Americas, all of them particularly are fractioned off. And so if we're all Moors, if we don't come together as one, unity is the key word. We're not getting anywhere. It's going to be very difficult, is the point that he's making.
You got Hakeem.
No, did you want to add something else, because we need to get some kind
No, go ahead.
No,
Hakeem,
well,
let me get Hakeem behind you. Hakeem behind you, Ross.
you were next. Oh, you was out there?
Yeah, Hakeem was next.
No, you go ahead and then we'll get Hakeem, because Hakeem got powerful stuff to say too. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
She can talk.
Well, now, I didn't
Finish
see
your
that
statement. Let him finish
Wait,
what he was
hold
saying.
on.
What was you saying? What did you want to end it up with? I want to hear.
He tells me
What I
how to run my
wanted to
class.
say is
Right, I
that
wanna hear.
You don't-
when it came 1986, 1986 was the time for the re-up on the treaty issue.
Right.
And the son of the Sultan, which was the prince at that time, was to take the power next. When it came time to sign the treaty, they knocked him off.
Right.
So they don't care nothing about no.
No, you missed the
Wait
point.
just a minute, let me finish.
See, that's what
We
I
don't
mean.
care nothing about no constitution or nothing else. George Bush I'm talking about, and his cronies, his buddies.
Well,
They're gonna have to knock him off.
no, I don't know if that's true.
No.
I don't know that. I hear what you're saying though, but I don't know if that's true. You have to remember that once something is put into motion in statute law and isn't challenged, it becomes law. So the more things were not challenged, the more of a right that the statute and civil jurisdiction or the federal people have the right to do what they're doing. So we're in a situation now where we're already behind a lot further than we should be and able to challenge the jurisdiction that they're in, because they don't even have to deal with the Constitution now at all. The Constitution is out of the courts. They're not dealing with that. It's all private. So they're dealing with things from a different perspective now. So it comes to a position where it's going to have to first be unification amongst the peoples. Now, when you talk about all of the potentials involved from a different frequency or different dimension, we are moving into another dimension. The planet is traveling at 70,000 miles per hour as we speak, and the Mayan calendars that were given from the Mayans predicted that from the year 3014 BC to the year 2012 BC was a time allotted to this level of consciousness, and that's why this man is working to the degree that he is to keep us cubicalized in a perspective of consciousness that will be able to be submissive to the jurisdiction that he's trying to establish. Everything he's doing is colorable. So once we reach a certain perspective, if that lack of vision that the Mayans had after that time frame is for the purpose of them not being able to see what was going to happen because it's a different place and a different elevation, there might be the potential chance that as Moors, and even as people not necessarily free from corporate jurisdiction, that who knows? They might be able to access things instantly in the effort to return themselves to the proper jurisdiction. Is that true? Is that not true? It's not important. I don't know, but regardless to what, at the end of the day, we still have to organize as best as possible amongst ourselves to be able to hold people responsible and to access the remedies for men like that being killed.
Hakeem.
All right, that's it. We have
Hakeem.
to- this is not a discussion, it's for people to ask questions, and you'll be asking 5, 6 in a row, we all know that, no disrespect, but it's just the truth.
Good brother,
Do that
good brother.
anyway.
Brother,
This
let's brother
brother is
Hakeem, right?
next here, and then Hakeem, and then the brother in the back. Thank you, I don't
I
mean
just
any
wanted to ask,
disrespect.
is there any connection with CMB and the MSTA?
And who?
The Morris Science Temple of America and CNA.
Wow. From what I mean, it goes, you know, at the end of the day, CMB was in continuum from what the Prophet was establishing. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was one of the brothers acknowledged from his degree to continue the work the way that he was continuing. Now, see, my problem as far as being detailed and intricate into the explanation you're looking for is I'm not coming from the temples. You understand? It's like the Moors that taught me were, and not expatriated, but they walked away from the temples with an understanding as best as possible as they could have before they walked away from it, like many have, and continued on in it in another fashion. But yes, CMB was very much in alignment with what the Prophet had established. Now, some called him a traitor. You know what I'm saying? But that's intricacies that I don't feel comfortable, you know, elaborating on because I'm not, you know what I'm saying?
He was a fellow Moor, like anyone else, and all of whatever the divisions and, you know, maybe he did something. It's not true. He was taught under the same, with no witchery, whatever happened there, that his work is at that work. And so if we don't receive his work, then we're remiss for that. We are wrong as Moors, because his work is at that work. Hakeem Jack.
Yes, I just want to clarify.
And you're next.
One of the things, what the Prophet set up, it wasn't just a temple or really a means to end, but it actually what he did was resurrect divine government amongst us once again. When you look on the back of that dollar bill, you got two spheres, you got two circles. One deals with divine government, the dying pyramid, the other one deals with the eagle, deals with the national government. The Prophet resurrected and reestablished divine government amongst our people once again. That's what the temple was. The temple is a form of government. When you look it up in the law books, it's known as ecclesiastical government. The same way you have the Pope and you got the different cardinals, so on and so forth, that's a form of ecclesiastical or divine government. So what the Prophet did was reestablish divine government here. That's why it wasn't until after the Prophet came when they put the iron pyramid on a dollar bill. Up until the time of the Prophet, the American people never seen that iron pyramid. They just brought it out during the time of the World's Fair and they put it back because it took the Prophet to resurrect divine government. So when you look at the structure of what the Prophet set up, it's a form of government. And in terms of unifying the Moors, your prophet is your unity. That's why Allah sends a prophet amongst the people to unify him. He becomes the standard of measurement by which you measure things against. In other words, we have standardized measurements. An ounce here is an ounce in California. An inch here is an inch in California. Before a nation or civilization get off the ground, you have to standardize. And then you can function as a nation. So the prophet operates as your ruler, as your standard. He's that rod of iron mentioned in the book of Revelations. It said the child ruled the nations with a rod of iron. That's what you measure everything according to. So if the Moors realign themselves up back with the prophet, then there will be unity. There's disunity because we strayed away from our prophet. All throughout history, whenever we strayed off the path, a prophet was sent amongst us to get us back on that path, and that was the purpose of Prophet Noble Ali. So understand, he set up divine government. Your temples are local units of self-government.
All right, now let me add something, because, you know, we can do that a whole bunch. I do want to make this clear. Just the two things you were talking about, the seals. Actually, I think we might want to look into that, because the pyramid, you said, like you were saying, the eagle is national and the pyramid was divine.
Divine and national movement.
When actually, that's true, it is, but the pyramid is actually the symbol, and you can take it right out of astrology, of civilization. So it's older and more ancient than that eagle, and that's a whole. Just so that we know that. Somebody back here was.
Yeah, I was listening to your talk, and I was trying to understand. You're talking about legalese and actual. You also talked about in this last time you spoke, not the last time you spoke about a corporate structure, freeing yourself from a corporate structure. What does, I didn't quite get the understanding.
Talking about a difference between what we understand through what we found with like Black's Law Dictionary and legalese, the actual definition of the word in reference to their etymology or their dissension through the languages, from Greek to Latin, if you will, and their use in English in legal terms, and a colloquial understanding of things from how they're used in everyday speech. You know what I'm saying? Like when you understand the word frivolous, right? If you look up the word frivolous in the dictionary, it'll be talking about something frail, something with lacking of substance. When you talk about the word frivolous in legalese, they're talking about filings, or they're talking about legal procedures that are actually too perfect to be challenged in a court of law. So when a lawyer talks to you about something being of a frivolous nature, he's talking about something being so perfect that the corporate jurisdiction can't even deal with it. So there's a difference between the legalese and the colloquial understanding of words, and what we understood the understanding of Black, and the idea and the connections with the connections to the terminology of Black in reference to brown people and Aboriginal people on this planet. There was an endearment in that term that gave us a connection to the positive aspects of the experience that we triumphed from, knowing that we had also acclaimed and become part of an experience that had to do with a slave experience through chattel slavery. But the idea of the consciousness of Black in reference to the law, in reference to the terminology of man in legal terms, was a whole different situation.
How does that apply to the corporate? You said the corporate is trying to incorporate.
Well, in reference to the way it affects us is, from what I understand, that terminology is not explained to you. So at the end of the day, if they can accredit you to an experience and accredit you to a nomenclature that is not who you are, they can change who it is that you are. If you are more, and they can accredit you to an experience that is Black, or they can accredit you to an experience that is white, or an experience that is Spanish, or so-called Indian, then they can give you an understanding of identity that is subject to the jurisdiction that they are presiding.
Thank you.
Yes.
Islam, about family. I just want to add to what brother is saying and stuff like that. Brother Kedar, I'm from Delaware Territory. I concur with your position and everything, brother. And I feel that, I'm one of the youth, and, we like ready to go to war. But at the same time, though, as I'm being educated and cultivated by Hakeem Bey and the elders in the movement, that's really shown it's not necessary. The European and Albion, they're not acting outside of law. It's us that got to get back on track. Right. They're not going to fight us. And for a lot of time, growing up, I grew up in various nationalistic movements and everything that wasn't really dealing with principles of nationality. These are, what we're experiencing here is nothing unique to oppress people all over the globe experience. And they've emerged out of it. And there are principles and laws that are set in effect for oppressed people to preserve their integrity. And this is the information that Malcolm found out that got him assassinated. He went over there talking all that rhetoric, and he said, no, brother, you have to nationalize. This is how all those oppressed nations in Africa routed out the Europeans after they were colonized, I think, because they reestablished their ties to the land by bringing themselves back in their proper person. But too many of us don't want to go ahead and resend that birth certificate. Too many of us think it's an honor to uphold Smith, Jones, and Johnson because of some so-called family tree or whatever the case may be that never really existed. So too many of us are committing fraud every day. And too many of us are actually believing that these so-called rules and regulations apply to us. So they call it what it is and we call it law. They come up with legislation and we call it law. They come up with a rule, a code, or ordinance, and we call it law. I was traveling through the Jersey territory, and they told me it was against the law to pump my own gas. I said, no. I never heard that. I was on it. I liked it. I ain't mad, but I wasn't gonna give you no tip. Because the only law that I recognize is the treaty and the Constitution. The supremacy clause in the Constitution says that the treaties are the supreme law of the land, and the Constitution is the only law that governs this land. Now, if we acquiesce and give that away and abandon that, that's not something that they're doing. We're doing that because we're calling that stuff law. But as I'm learning, that when you put yourself on the right side of law and follow the protocols of governmental principles, they will not fight you for it. They wear fez just like we do. Peace. This is the book. That's the book that has to do with the breakdown on
the straw people and the whole thing that took place in Home did.
He actually, at Long Island University, he actually did a portion of the presentation that dealt with the Wizard of Oz and what that whole meaning was.
Actually, that was Myra L. who did that presentation.
Well, no, he did that portion.
That was Myra L.
Yeah.
Well, all right, it was Myra L's presentation, but he actually did the slide presentation of the Wizard of Oz.
All right, in the meantime, just give everybody the proper name of it in case they're interested.
Could you put, I want to put in the camera,
It's a
so you
good
show
book
it to
to
the
read.
camera?
Oh, you have someone in
The
there.
author,
Let's back a little bit.
What's the author's name of that book?
1 second. Okay, wait. Can you read it?
Yeah, I'm gonna read it. Okay, the name of the book is Historians, Wizard of Oz. Reading L. Frank Brahms' classic as a political and monetary allegory. Edited by Ranjit, R-A-N-J-I-T, S. Dichi, D-I-G-H-E. The Historians, Wizard of Oz. Edited by Ranji, R-A-N-J-I-T, S-D-I-G-H-E.
Thank you.
All right. You have a question in the back.
Yes, fortunately I was a young brother that had a great thirst for information, but how do you get younger brothers and sisters to enter rooms like this? Because mostly everybody in here are adults, so how do you feel you can, because I see that you're a young brother, how do you bring this young brothers and sisters to come in here?
I was teaching, honestly, I was teaching over at some non-for-profits over here with Jeff Canada, Harlem's Children's Home, doing college advisement, basically helping kids get their applications together for school, and I was trying to introduce them to brothers like Ivan Van Sertima, trying to introduce them to J.A. Rogers, trying to introduce them to Chancellor Williams and all these brothers that helped pave the way to help us understand our experience, as so-called black people or, Africans or what have you. And the problem is that the majority of the work that they had prioritized was to get out of high school. They're not really focused on learning to the degree that they can because they're still dealing with a lot of programming. So unfortunately, it's a situation where the reading and the information that they could possess is not necessarily available because of the obstacles they have in reference to accrediting themselves and being validated by the system right now. So my immediate resolve for that was to set myself up in a situation where I could reach them through the language they speak best, and that's music. Yes. So through the music, I'm now learning how to process what aspects of the information that I could put out in a form that's going to be approachable to an ear that's conditioned to escapism. You know what I'm saying? And focus to the degree that I can to ingrain that in them unconsciously. You know what I'm saying? And hopefully that'll spark seeds for them to be curious enough. Because remember, you can't lead a horse, you can't make a horse drink, you can only lead him to the water, right? So we'll see what happens. But as far as I'm concerned, the message is still there on a certain frequency.
I have a comment to that. We look at a lot of our youth, right, and they talk about they're in gangs, and such, just really looking for unity and love, really, more than what we do, I think. In many ways, some of the rituals and the things that they might be involved with might not be correct because it's like warriors without a cause. Now, we know that the fight is corporate. We know that it's our name being owned. We know that it's in the courtroom oftentimes right now, right? So why couldn't the youth have equipped with them information and go up into the courtroom? In proper, in proper form. Not to go in and bust it up and cause any problem, but in proper decorum. That would be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would be like if they could do that. Now, you made a comment, and I see you have your hand next, but you made a comment about the Constitution and about the courts, Clay. A lot of us are in there. How do you see how we get out of that?
Well, unfortunately, we're in a situation now that we cannot avoid this federal jurisdiction. We cannot choose not to deal with it. It has become so rampant, and they've seized such, they have accredited themselves such ludicrous understandings of the power that they were given to even set up the corporate body politic the way that it was set up, that we now have to step back in it within the proper fashion to be able to conduct how it is operated. But there's no way, as Moors as anybody, we are going to be able to completely avoid that jurisdiction, because they are in secret accrediting us and holding us a claim to compellence, to performance with certain contracts that they're not telling us about, that suck us right back into the jurisdiction that we're telling them we free from the jump.
There you go.
So you can claim you are as sovereign as you want to and talk about the jurisdiction that precedes whatever jurisdiction they were granted, as long as till you blue in the face. But at the end of the day, if there are contracts against your life that you are not aware of, they're going to hold you to those contracts. And that's just the way it is.
And some of those are, for instance, that you're speaking of is, for instance, the birth certificate, which is the bond that puts you into the slavery, into the corporation in the first
Well,
place.
the birth, from what I was taught, the birth certificate doesn't necessarily put you into the bondage. It is a receipt,
Yes.
if you will, for the collateral granted to them on your name.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, right.
The bill of lading.
Yeah.
Right.
Security is what
So-
gives it a hypothecation
Right.
on the market.
Well, first, no, this brother, he's first. I just don't want to get out of order. Who had their hand up back there? It was you.
Islam. Brother T. Williams, I just wanted to respond to the question about how do we involve the youth, and my position was similar to that which the sister gave. My thought is that the way that we involve the youth is by advocating for them. Our youth feel very much alone. Our youth between the ages of, 10 or 12, on up to when, as long as you have your health and strength, maybe 36 and up or whatever. But youth in particular are being targeted. I know that from my personal experience, by being arrested for the first time when I was about 10 because I was a big brother. I don't look like it now, but I was. And then, so the key is, I think that through associating, through forming associations, it can be 3 people, but forming associations that are designed to advocate for our youth. The associations need to be organized in our own proper person. Get out of that thinking of forming corporate entities, 501c3s, but unincorporated associations whose bylaws require the officers to act under the constitutional provisions that state that the common law remains in effect. The bylaws have to take the charter and constitution and organic law of the unincorporated associations right into the law of nations, so that we as officers of these types of associations, and if we have to go to court, that we are lawfully entitled to draw from the law of nations, lawfully entitled to draw from the common law, lawfully entitled to draw from the Constitution of the State of New York, and use those divine rights and also the First Amendment, because we want to rely upon our prophet and our divine law and the protection that gives us. But these are the powers or the authority from which we act. Officers of our associations act, but the key is for 2 or more persons to organize ourselves into associations claiming these rights and powers to advocate for our people, for our young people, because the young people feel very much alone, and it's, they see that the older people are afraid to step in front of the gun for them. The older people have to demonstrate that we know that there's no death, and we're not afraid to step in front of the gun, and that we're going to fight if it means quote unquote giving up our life to save our young people. And when the young people see that we're willing to do that, then they will adhere to those associations, and the association will be an institute, for the preservation of the people through education. That's where the Moorish scientists will be at. Once we get the brothers out of Rikers Island to the extent that we can, then we invite them, no compulsion in Islam, we invite them to the school, and there have to be benefits. Enough of these associations that we're a part of where we give, and we as members don't receive anything of benefit from it. Some of the ways that we can give benefits back to our members is to actually genuinely create programs to teach our youth, to offer them alternatives. So the key is to form unincorporated associations that will advocate for our youth pursuant to the common law. One form or mode of doing that is through the form of trust. Common law trust, charitable trust, where those youth are the beneficiaries of the trust, and the trustees are authorized to represent the trust as attorneys in court, and we can even claim legal fees for the work that we do while advocating for the youth and other members in our community. Peace. Peace.
Islam. Yeah, I think what the brother said is excellent, you know. And one of the things we got to do, because I taught in the public school system. My last assignment was in the Fort Apache precinct in the Bronx. And what I find is that we have to understand everything comes in 4 generations. This generation, the hip hop generation, what they call Generation X. The generation that's coming up now is what's known as the millennial generation. They have a soldier spirit. And this is why America's trying to get into these endless wars to recruit that spirit into that. Generation X is the 4th generation. We represent the same generation the Prophet did. The Prophet was the Generation X of his time. That's why he said the 3rd and 4th generation. And he probably said he will repeat himself, meaning that the hip-hop generation was the repetition of the Prophet. That's why we're the ones who's resurrecting the Moorish movement at this day and time. Now, the young generation, what they need, and one of the things that we're going to implement within the temple, because why reinvent the wheel? If the Prophet already set up the structure, we might as well set up auxiliaries within the temple. For instance, military science academies for these young brothers and sisters. They need to be drilled. They need their behinds drilled. You got to come to them with strength. These children don't respect nothing that's not stronger than themselves. When you see these kids on these buses, these trains acting up, cursing and stuff like that, they begging you to discipline them. They want you to discipline them. That's what they're calling you to do. And when they see you just sit there scared, don't say nothing to them, they get even wilder. Because they call on you to discipline them. So what we have to do first, what we're going to do, we're going to organize the men and the women that's already adults. And then once we organize, then you organize the junior ones. So we're going to form a body amongst ourselves, and then we're going to train them. So just like in the Moorish times, you had a body known as the Diwan. The Diwan was a military that ran the Moorish Empire. The individual soldiers were known as the Bokhara. And these were the ones that ran the Moorish Empire. So what we're going to form is a D-WAN, and then we're going to form a junior D-WAN for the boys and girls, just like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We got to form those type of organizations for them to give them cohesion, so they'll be part of that as opposed to the gangs. You see what I'm saying? They go to the gangs because we're not forming that which will give them that same thing righteously within the temples. So that's what we're going to form within the temple, just like we have the Boy Scouts. We're going to form our own junior D-WANs for the boys and the girls. We're going to drill them. We're going to teach them discipline. We're going to teach them how they navigate themselves and how they should behave out in public, and then they won't run into the situations that they're running with the cops. In the meantime, we're going to step to the cops, the police, and we're going to tell them, these are our children. We taught them and we trained them how they should properly act. If there's any problem, don't take it upon yourself to discipline. Let us know. We'll handle it. All right, so these are the things that we got to do. Why reinvent the wheel? We already have a structure that the Union State Society cannot molest. So we might as well operate within that. We could form trusts within the temple as auxiliaries. What's the purpose of auxiliary? The purpose of auxiliary is to help the temple what? Meet its goals and objectives. So we could form it right within there. We don't have to go outside that, and we within the fortifications of our temple, which he can't cross the barrier of church and state. That's why the prophet did it the way he did it. He understood that under religious freedom, you will have the full rights of self-determination under religious freedom, and he cannot cross that barrier to molest you. And so this is what we have to do. See, I realized, I came up to the grace of all these different things, and I realized that we were out of order. And I want to issue a warning on the tape, documenting, to tell Moors, y'all better stop doing what y'all doing out here with these courts and these things because you're out of order. That's not the way the prophet taught us to do things. The prophet didn't tell us to go out here and do these things. We want land, go out there and buy land. America's for sale. The prophet brought land. You just see the prophet out here trying to take land from people. You don't operate like that. We have to begin operating like a nation. The prophet set up what was known as the Supreme Grand Council, and that was the body that the prophet set up to interface with the United States of America, with the national government to secure our rights. Not individuals taking upon themselves to write the president. A nation don't function like that. How does an American citizen look, an average American citizen look right into the Prime Minister of Japan or whatever, saying that he represents the American people? They're gonna laugh at that. They're not gonna take that seriously. A nation does not operate like that. What you do is line yourself up with your Supreme Grand Council, which is the body that's supposed to interface with them, and then you take it case by case. If you feel it's something that violates the constitutional rights, then you bring a test case before the Supreme Court, and we all line up behind that one case.
Right.
Not a whole bunch of individuals going one at a time and you just picking you up one at a time. A nation does not function like that.
So you're saying
You
a
were out
class
of order.
action, you're saying a class action suit, and when you say all line up behind that, that is true in terms of in law. That's basically what Brother Clay is saying. He's saying that until we have unity and there's more than one person. So you're not really saying anything different than what he has said.
What I'm saying is that the key to the unity is going to be lining up behind your prophet. That's the key. That's the key. That's the central maypole. That's the central thing that you rally around.
Right. No, I understand. No. He went on to, he's going into law now, and to go into the courtroom as a class action. That's what I'm getting at, and I'm not disputing with him. He went past the children thing and went to the law in terms of how to go and approach the courts, and that it should be, constitutional issues should be done in a class action suit as a group of people. And that is correct, except for there's one problem, and we're gonna go on to the next question. We don't come together as a unit, whether it be under the guise of the MSTA of A, or Science Temple of America, or whether it be under the guise of something else. He's right, but we don't do that. That's it. Next question. Oh, yeah, sure, please do.
It's difficult because it's unfortunate as it is, the reality is
put your head up, please.
Unfortunate as it is, the reality is that there is a significant percentage of the numbers of people necessary to fortify what the movement of Moors is doing to reestablish themselves and to see change and counterbalance the tyranny marauding the planet, that will not be able to fathom and will not be able to adjoin with the fundamentals and principles that are established through the specifics that were established in the right that they were established as the way the prophet did it. And all that to say, it's not so much a judgment, or it's not so much a preference on how they decide to adjoin themselves to their reclaimance of rights. It's a recognition that to some degree, it's not, they've erased so much history as to who is who, that you have a situation now where whether you could be Sephardic Jew, you could be European from wherever, you could tell them you of the Washita Nation or whatever, because they've erased all the records. They don't know who's who anymore. They can't tell you you're not that person. So you have plenty of people in the sovereign community that are joining to the counterbalance of the crap that's going on in the courts, that are of as such of, or not as, I want to say an equal value, but they're of an additive to the movement that will help what's happening amongst Moors in a way that we can't deny. So to some degree, there has to be a tolerance to who and how people are joining themselves and annexing themselves to the movement towards freedom. And there are plenty of sovereigns that are just stepping in specifically as secured parties, dealing with the UCC and all that stuff. And I know that's a touchy word amongst some Moors. So I don't even want to go into all of that, but the point is that the unity is going to happen beyond what's happening with the neutral or the nuclear center of Moors who were enlightened by what the prophet was brought. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way things are, regardless of how we decide to move, or your preference in, or your upbringings in how to accredit yourself to divinity. You know?
Anybody who had a question with you?
Oh, no, I just wanted to add what the brother was saying in the question form, because I heard him saying like all the various Moorish movements going by different titles and entities, whatever the case may be. I study history and everything, and I study, you know, the Moorish history and the empires that we had, although, you know, we had a general, you know, dominion, there were still individual posts and outposts and civilizations and subcultures within that overall empire that comprised the whole. But, I mean, you know, even though you had Egypt, you had, you know, Shanghai and Mali and all these, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where we're all just under one umbrella per se.
Right.
And I don't want to get into, I don't think it's a positive impression to give people that you can't be creative, because that is our spark as a people. We creative.
Right.
And where need, you know, arises, we're going to fill that need and stuff like that, you know, the law of necessity.
Yeah.
But there has to be a fundamental agreement
Yes.
and certain protocols of law, which, you know, my big brother Hakeem Bey is always emphasizing everything like that, because, you know, a nation cannot come against, you can't come against an organization disorganized.
That's right.
So no matter how illegitimate, this is an insolvent government. The Congress doesn't even exist. They dissolved the Congress when it was first created. So all this is really an illusion. And because we're so disorganized, we can't even attack it, you know, for the illusion that it is and everything. We got to kind of play their game and stuff like that. So, you know, keep your creative spark, your individuality, you know, the things that bring, you know, your clan together, but understand that the common uniting faction goal is the one who resurrected this movement to begin with, which is Prophet Noble Joe Ali. We ain't got to be a personality worshiper, but just understand what he put into effect. Because what he put into effect created, you know, this divide that's going on right now. What he did created a bankruptcy that actually shut the whole government down now. It's a bankrupt government. They had to compromise their sovereignty and become corporations as a result of what Prophet Noble Joe Ali did. So when you understand those things, you can appreciate it, and we should celebrate what we have, because I think for real, I don't think a lot of us know what we have, because we have the greatest solution and answer to all the problems out there. I mean, I ain't go to college, I ain't go to law school, I sit and talk to congressmen, senators, all that, and they sit and be just dazzled with the perspective that we bring on law, because it's so humanistic and so holistic, and it's so simplistic in its essence, and that I think a lot of us miss what we have. The greatest issue I see, from my perspective, and I'm just babying this, is that we don't have the exposure. We, brothers and sisters who got this information, we need to put ourselves in venues that will expose it. The courtroom is not the venue for that. You know what I mean? The courtroom just do what you gotta do and get up out of there. We gotta start putting our time, our money, our effort, and our dedication to putting ourselves in areas and creating venues where we can expose our people to this information.
Missionary work.
Yeah, this shouldn't be mystic information.
Yes, sister right here.
So when are we gonna start these more scout clubs, or like when? Like tomorrow?
Well, I don't know when he's gonna start his,
I'm
you
just
might wanna
saying.
ask him if he's starting something or someone individually. I know what you're saying. In order to do that, it's what he just said. You have to make yourself known to the people. And all of this time and all of these years, if you're not, it's missionary work. And even the prophet himself, it's missionary work. Meaning, when you go to the courtrooms, you should see some Moors with fences on there in the courtrooms. When you go outside your door on 125th or wherever you're going, you should see Moors out there doing the missionary work, period. So when that's going to happen is when the people are going to do that, period.
But I think, like, right now, we can start putting out flyers, like, for little kids, just forming little groups, for them to go to for a half hour.
Flyers for little children, excuse me, for little children, for what? You can't have a class or a situation for little children until you have it organized.
With the adults.
With the adults, period. So we're not here.
Just to answer the question, you asked when.
Islam.
Sister asked when we're gonna open up December 10th on 3rd Avenue between 121st and 122nd Street. What's the exact address of Brother Jamal? The number address?
U.S. Patent.
Well, it's on 3rd Avenue between 121st and 122nd Street. We invite you to come out. We're gonna open the doors of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We're gonna set up a Sunday school for the children. So if you have children, please bring them out, because we want them to socialize with other young Moors and Moor sisters, brothers and sisters. And come out, take part, whatever skills you have, whatever expertise you have, bring it, because we're gonna use it, we're gonna utilize it.
Okay.
All right? So I
Alright.
just wanted to let you know, December
That's
10th,
good.
Sunday, December 10th, come get your nationality, come get nationalized within the Prophet's Temple, because I just want to say one other thing. Remember when they arrested those 7 brothers in Florida, and the word Moors or Moors connection came out
Right.
associated with them?
And then they shut it down.
The first thing they did, because they're about to make their move, just like they moved on the Patriots. See, the first thing they got to do is demonize you in the media, and then they make their move. So as soon as they arrested those brothers, they went to speak to the Supreme Grand Chief in Chicago, because they want to ascertain what is the true Prophet's Temple, because they know they can't touch that. Once they ascertain that, all these brothers and sisters out here doing all this stuff, UCC, all this crazy stuff out here, they're going to snatch them up in a wide net. I'm letting y'all know now. Line yourself up with the Prophet's Temple. I'm telling you, because that's going to be the only sanctuary in this day and time. All else is going to be seen to fail. Mark my words.
You might not get another warning, that's true.
I'm telling you. That's why I'm putting it out there, because I know what's about to happen, but I'm washing my hands of the blood right now.
And can
Right
I
now.
add to that, on the balance, there are a lot of our people, Moors, and we're all Moors, whether we recognize it or not, or proclaim it. So that's our brothers and our sisters, that's our brethren, who have gotten involved with the UCC's lack of proper guidance on what their nationality birthright was. No, that's the truth. If the proper guidance, missionary work, this is my opinion, from my experience, was done over these generations, they wouldn't have to have done that, because they would have known what their nationality and birthright. Let me just
Well, it's
finish.
happening now.
Let me just finish.
Now.
Not all Moors who get involved in this want to or have gotten involved in UCCs. I know I don't. I know what that is. I know some that have. Not all of them have. A lot of the people, but like I said, and I repeat again, if they had been, if the missionary work was done, and they knew all you Asiatics in the North American continent, hear the truth about your nationality and birthright, if that call had actually been put out in the streets where the people are, maybe they wouldn't have had to go through that. But that's not here nor there. The thing too is this, the temples, and this is not against the temples, and every time you have a Moorish affair, that it ends up being that way. Why? Because the prophet sits at the temple, because the prophet bought this, because wherever you are, you put a circle around you, that's your temple, you're the temple. That's truly it. But because he brought it, you have no way, you have to run into Prophet Muhammad Ali. But you never heard of him. He's not taught about in school. So I say again, if the missionary work was done, you should know everything about him. And that's just a whole nother program. So if it were done, they might not be going for the UCC. I say this. No, we're not making this a debate here. No, I'm not finished, please. No disrespect. The temples are going to meet the people. And the people are going to meet the temples. But I'm going to tell you like this. It's not going to be the kind of meeting that the temples expect to have. Neither is it going to be the kind of meeting that the people are going to want to have. That's what's going to happen. So whatever was supposed to happen, it didn't happen. I still say, if my child and your child could walk outside and see brothers with fezzes on, telling them about their nationality and their birthright, we wouldn't be where we are. And with that, we really do have to close out, because we got about maybe 15 or 20 more minutes. Did you have a question back there, brother? I'm sorry, I got two. Yes, I'll get you.
Well,
You had one.
the prophet has brought us the lessons. And you're supposed to take the lessons and take it out there to the street.
That's the point
The
I'm
tools
making.
of the mind.
That's
You
the
got
point
the
I'm
tools for the mind, and use the mind. That's all it is.
That's the point I'm making.
Spread the information, that's all.
That's the point I'm making. Now, before we all, get ungodly, we got, our assistant has a
I just
question.
wanted to ask Clay, in terms of this age of Aquarius, he was talking about that.
Islam, can you stand up?
No, in terms of this age
Stand
of
up.
Aquarius,
Can you see-
and
can you see
how
the
does
thing?
that, in terms
Can you
of
see
young
the thing?
Moors coming up, how do we play a part of that in this new age of Aquarius?
Well, I think it's something similar to what the brother was talking about with the soldiers and the mentality of the Moors coming up now.
Yeah.
The reality is, from what I understand from my teachings of astrology, the end of the 30s and the 1940s was the time that the Piscean age started to phase out of the experience on this continent and worldwide. So you have an experience now